It was a quiet evening on Earth. The stars twinkled softly above, unaware of the chaos that was about to unfold. Humanity had always looked to the heavens with wonder, dreaming of the day they might reach the stars. But no one could have imagined what was coming. On the outskirts of the solar system, a massive fleet appeared without warning. It was not a peaceful visit. The ships were enormous, their dark, sleek surfaces reflecting the cold emptiness of space. This was no ordinary encounter. It was the arrival of the intergalactic empire, a vast and powerful empire that controlled hundreds of worlds across the galaxy. The fleet moved closer to Earth at an unsettling speed. Each ship seemed to pulse with an energy that felt as if it could crush the planet beneath it. For a moment, the world held its breath. News networks around the globe flashed images of the approaching ships. Governments scrambled to make sense of the situation. Military leaders, scientists, and world leaders tried to communicate with the Empire's fleet, but no response came. The silence of space was deafening. Then, on all channels, a message broadcasted across the world. It was the voice of the Empire's commander, deep and commanding. "People of Earth," the voice said, "we are the Empire of the Stars. We have watched your world for centuries. You have reached a point where you are no longer insignificant. It is time for you to join us. You will kneel before the might of our empire, or we will make you." The words sent a shockwave of fear through the planet. People stared at their screens, unable to comprehend the message. What did it mean? Who were these people? And what did they want from Earth? In capitals around the world, leaders rushed to hold emergency meetings. The United Nations convened in haste, as nations came together to discuss the strange and frightening announcement. Most were terrified. The Empire's fleet was unlike anything humanity had ever seen. There were ships large enough to block out the sun, with technology far beyond anything the most advanced Earth governments had developed. What hope did humanity have against such power? The governments debated for hours. Some leaders suggested surrender. "There's no way we can fight back," one said. "We should comply and hope they show mercy." Others, however, were not so quick to bow down. "We cannot surrender," a strong voice declared. "We are humans. We fought through every challenge, from wars to natural disasters. We cannot let another empire decide our fate." This voice began to gather support. People across the world started to speak out. The idea of surrendering to an unknown alien empire seemed unacceptable to many. The idea that Earth should give up its independence, its very identity, was unimaginable. If humanity were to kneel, it would mean giving up everything. Around the world, cities came to life with activity. Military leaders met in secret, brainstorming strategies. Scientists and engineers worked tirelessly to develop new technologies. They knew they were outmatched, but they weren't ready to give up just yet. In the small town of Maryville, a young inventor named Daniel watched the news unfold. He had always dreamed of space travel, but now, facing the reality of an alien empire, his thoughts were filled with fear and uncertainty. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that humanity was capable of more. They had survived wars, disease, and environmental disasters. Why couldn't they survive this? Daniel wasn't the only one who felt this way. Across the planet, people began to stir with a new sense of purpose. Some were afraid, yes, but many were angry. How dare an alien empire threaten Earth? They had no idea what humans were capable of when they were pushed to the brink. The first day of the Empire's arrival passed in a tense silence. No one knew what the Empire would do next. But deep down, Earth's people began to realize something important. They had one advantage. They had each other. And perhaps, in the face of an overwhelming threat, that would be enough. As the days stretched into weeks, the Empire's fleet remained in orbit, waiting for Earth's decision. They were patient, but Earth was growing restless. The world was divided between those who wanted to negotiate and those who refused to give in. Yet, one thing was certain. Earth had made its choice. It would not kneel. The question now was whether the Empire would respect that decision, or whether the true battle for Earth's survival was only just beginning. The days after the Empire's arrival were filled with tension and uncertainty. People all around the world sat glued to their screens, waiting for the next move. The message from the Empire still echoed in their minds. "You will kneel before the might of our Empire, or we will make you." Some saw it as a warning, others as a promise of destruction. But for most of Earth's inhabitants, something more powerful than fear began to grow: defiance. In every city, in every corner of the world, people began to speak out. Protests broke out in the streets, not against the Empire, but against the idea of surrender. Men and women, young and old, marched together. They held signs with simple, bold words: "We are Earth. We will not kneel." There was something in the air, a feeling that had not been felt in centuries. It was the spirit of resistance, of unity, and it was spreading quickly. Back in the United Nations, a series of emergency meetings were called. The room was tense as world leaders argued over the best course of action. The generals argued for submission, claiming Earth had no chance of defeating such a powerful force. But there were others, including several influential scientists, who saw things differently. Dr. Helen Carter, a brilliant physicist from the United States, stood up. "We may not have the weapons or the ships the Empire does, but we have something they don't. We have ingenuity. We have the will to fight. And most importantly, we have each other." Her voice was calm, but it rang with conviction. The room fell silent. The idea of standing up to the Empire had seemed impossible just days ago, but now it felt like the only option. Helen's words were not just a call to action. They were a spark that ignited a flame within the hearts of the leaders. At the same time, all over Earth, individuals were beginning to contribute in their own ways. Engineers, scientists, doctors, and even ordinary citizens started working together, pooling their resources to create a plan. No one was going to wait for a hero to arrive. They were going to be the heroes of their own story. In the bustling city of Tokyo, young inventor Naomi Takeda had a vision. She spent sleepless nights in her workshop, surrounded by blueprints and tools, trying to think of a way to level the playing field. Her small team of engineers worked alongside her, developing new ideas. They knew they were racing against time, but they also knew that Earth's future depended on their success. While Naomi's team worked on creating advanced technology, others focused on gathering intelligence about the Empire's weaknesses. Despite their advanced technology, the Empire was not invincible. There were cracks in their armor, small details that Earth's brightest minds could exploit. The Empire's arrogance had blinded them to the potential of humanity's creativity. Earth's people were used to fighting against the odds. They were resilient, and they had a way of surprising their enemies. As the days turned into weeks, more and more nations began to commit to the cause. Countries that had once been rivals now joined forces. Military forces from every continent came together, not to fight a war of aggression, but to defend their home, to protect the Earth they loved. Among the people, there were no longer divisions of race, nationality, or culture. The human spirit had united them all in a single purpose: survival. They shared knowledge, shared ideas, and above all, they shared a belief that they were not powerless. In a small town in Brazil, Marcos and his family were busy assembling a strange device. Marcos was a farmer, but he had always had an interest in mechanics. When the threat of the Empire arrived, he put aside his tools for the land and picked up his old workshop equipment. Along with his neighbors, they built a communication device designed to jam the Empire's signals. It was nothing compared to the technology of the invaders, but it would be a start. Meanwhile, in a laboratory in India, a team of biologists worked on human enhancement projects. They'd researched ways to unlock the hidden potential in the human mind and body, hoping to develop abilities that could help Earth's soldiers survive against the Empire's advanced weapons. No one was sure how far their experiments would go, but they knew they had to try. Earth's collective effort was becoming a force to be reckoned with. What had started as fear and uncertainty was now becoming a global movement. Governments, scientists, soldiers, and civilians all played their part. They weren't just resisting. They were preparing to fight back. As Earth continued to prepare for the coming conflict, the Empire's fleet remained in orbit, waiting for Earth to make its decision. Their commanders watched with interest, unsure of what to expect. They had never encountered a species like humanity before. They had assumed Earth would bow to their might. But now, they saw something they hadn't anticipated: the human will to survive. In the hearts of Earth's people, there was no more doubt. They had made their choice. They would not kneel. They would fight for their freedom, for their planet, and for the future of humanity. As the days passed, Earth's preparations to face the Empire grew more intense. In cities and laboratories across the world, scientists, engineers, and ordinary citizens worked day and night, driven by a single goal: to find a way to stand against the Empire's overwhelming power. Time was running out, and Earth's hope rested on one thing: innovation. Dr. Helen Carter, who had become one of Earth's leading voices in the fight, gathered a group of scientists and engineers from various countries. They all worked together in a secret underground facility, deep in the heart of the Rocky Mountains. It was here that they began developing what they called Project Ascend. The concept behind Project Ascend was simple. They needed to create a weapon, not of destruction, but of enhancement. The idea was not to build a machine capable of defeating the Empire's warships, but rather to enhance the very people who would fight. The goal was to unlock the hidden potential in the human mind and body, giving ordinary people the abilities they needed to challenge the Empire's advanced technology. For months, Helen and her team experimented with cutting-edge biotechnology and artificial intelligence. They believed that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in their weapons, but in their adaptability and willpower. If they could harness and amplify the brain's natural abilities, they might just have a chance. The first breakthrough came when they discovered a way to amplify human cognitive abilities through a neural interface. This interface allowed humans to access deeper levels of brain function, enhancing memory, focus, and reaction speed. It was not just an improvement in intellect. It was a way to tap into the brain's untapped power. But this was just the beginning. The team knew they needed to do more. They needed to push the boundaries even further. They began working on enhancing physical strength, agility, and endurance by integrating biotechnology with the human body. They designed a series of suits that would allow people to tap into their physical potential, enhancing their strength, speed, and stamina without relying on traditional weapons. As the project developed, more and more volunteers stepped forward. They were ordinary people, teachers, students, farmers, and workers who had never thought of themselves as fighters. But in the face of the Empire's threat, they were willing to do anything to protect their planet. They underwent the procedures to enhance their minds and bodies, becoming part of a new generation of warriors, humans who were more than they had ever been before. Meanwhile, across the globe, other teams worked on different strategies. In Brazil, Marcos, the farmer who had helped build the communication jammer, was now working with a team to build advanced drones. These drones were designed to act as scouts, gathering intelligence on the Empire's fleet and relaying information to Earth's defense forces. They were small and fast, equipped with sensors to detect weaknesses in the Empire's technology. Earth's military leaders saw these drones as their eyes in the sky, crucial for understanding the Empire's movements. In India, biologists continued to experiment with human enhancement. They had developed a serum that allowed individuals to increase their endurance and healing abilities. This was no longer about simply fighting back. It was about making humans as resilient as possible in the face of an overwhelming enemy. Soldiers trained with these new abilities, learning to push their limits, knowing that their survival might depend on it. Back in the United States, Dr. Carter's team had made their biggest discovery yet. They had successfully developed a neural link that connected humans to machines. This allowed enhanced humans to interface directly with the technology they had built. controlling drones, defense systems, and even large mechanical suits with nothing more than their thoughts. It was a level of control and coordination that the Empire could never have anticipated. Humans were no longer just fighting with weapons. They were becoming the weapons themselves. As these new warriors trained, they learned not only to use their enhanced abilities, but also to rely on one another. They were a team, working together to overcome the challenges that the Empire would throw at them. The power of their unity became their greatest strength. Each individual, no matter their background, brought something to the table. The scientist brought knowledge. The soldier brought experience. The farmer brought resilience. And together, they were more than the sum of their parts. The world began to change as more and more people embraced the idea of enhancement. People who had once been afraid now stood tall, filled with confidence. The idea of fighting back against the Empire no longer seemed impossible. It felt like a dream, but a dream that was becoming reality. And then, one day, after months of preparation, the world received a signal from space. It was a message from the Empire, delivered through the same communication channel they had used before. "Your refusal to kneel has been noted," the voice from the Empire boomed. "You have no chance of victory. Surrender now, or face the consequences." The people of Earth did not respond with fear or surrender. They responded with determination. The time for talk was over. Earth had a new weapon, humanity itself. As the Empire's fleet loomed larger in the sky, Earth's warriors stood ready. They were no longer the helpless, fearful humans of old. They were enhanced, united, and resolute. And they were about to show the Empire that Earth would never kneel. The tension in the air had reached its peak. The Empire's fleet remained in Earth's orbit, its massive ships like shadows hovering over the planet, a constant reminder of the threat humanity faced. Yet, despite the fear that had initially gripped the world, something had changed. Earth had united. It was no longer a planet of divided nations and differing beliefs. Now, it was a single force, determined to fight for its future. Dr. Helen Carter and the team of enhanced warriors had worked tirelessly, preparing for the first confrontation. Their training had not been easy. They pushed themselves to their limits, learning to harness their new abilities, from enhanced strength to faster reflexes. Their bodies and minds were no longer the same. They had become more than human. They had become a symbol of Earth's defiance. The first battle would take place in Earth's orbit. The plan was simple: strike the Empire's fleet while they were still in the process of preparing their final assault. Earth's military, along with the newly enhanced warriors, had developed a strategy to hit fast and hard, aiming to catch the Empire off guard. As the time approached, the entire world held its breath. The enhanced warriors, outfitted in their high-tech suits, stood in the control centers, ready for the mission ahead. These were ordinary people, transformed by science and determination. Among them was Naomi Takeda, the inventor from Tokyo, and Marcos, the farmer-turned-engineer from Brazil. Both had volunteered to join the fight, knowing that Earth's future depended on this battle. The plan was to use the newly developed drones as scouts, providing vital information about the Empire's fleet. With these drones, Earth's forces would be able to see the Empire's ships from every angle, find their weaknesses, and exploit them. It was a risky move, but it was their best chance. The launch took place at dawn. Rockets carrying Earth's enhanced warriors shot into the sky, leaving behind trails of smoke as they ascended toward the waiting Empire fleet. Inside the spacecraft, the warriors were calm, focused. They were not soldiers by training, but they had become something more powerful. They were Earth's last hope. Once in orbit, the warriors took control of their drones. They flew silently around the Empire's fleet, collecting data and mapping out every ship's weak point. With each passing moment, the warriors grew more confident. The Empire's fleet was indeed massive, but it was not invincible. Earth's fighters, despite their limited resources, had found a way to use their advantages. The first strike came from a small group of warriors in specially designed suits that allowed them to move at incredible speeds. They launched themselves from their spacecraft, using jetpacks to reach the Empire's flagship. The Empire's defenses were strong, but they were not prepared for human ingenuity. The warriors dodged laser beams and energy blasts, their enhanced reflexes allowing them to move faster than the Empire could target them. Using the information provided by the drones, Earth's fighters made their move. They targeted the weak points in the Empire's ships, disabling key systems with precision strikes. Within minutes, the first ship in the Empire's fleet was crippled. Its engines sputtered, and its weapons went silent. The Empire's commanders were caught off guard. They had expected the humans to be helpless, but what they saw before them was a force unlike anything they had encountered. Back on Earth, people watched the battle unfold in real time. News stations broadcasted live footage of the space battle, showing Earth's warriors moving with incredible speed and coordination. It was clear that the tables were turning. The Empire's fleet, which had once seemed invincible, was now struggling to maintain control. As the battle continued, the Empire's arrogance began to crumble. Earth's warriors, once underestimated, now held the upper hand. They worked together seamlessly, using their enhanced abilities to outsmart and outmaneuver the Empire's superior technology. The Empire's ships were powerful, but they lacked the creativity and adaptability of humans. Earth's fighters, with their ingenuity and determination, were proving that they could take on an enemy far more advanced than themselves. By the end of the battle, Earth had scored its first major victory. The Empire's fleet was severely damaged, with several ships either destroyed or disabled. The remaining ships retreated, unsure of how to respond to the unexpected resistance. The Empire had underestimated humanity, and now they were paying the price. On Earth, celebrations erupted. People flooded the streets, cheering and waving flags. It was the first victory in what would surely be a long and difficult war, but it was a victory nonetheless. Earth had shown that it was not willing to be conquered. It had shown that, no matter how powerful the enemy, humanity would fight back. Dr. Helen Carter stood on the balcony of a military command center, watching the celebrations below. She felt a sense of pride swell in her chest. It wasn't just the victory that mattered, it was what it represented. It represented humanity's refusal to accept defeat. It represented the strength of the human spirit. As the sun set on the first day of Earth's resistance, the message was clear. Earth had fought back, and it would continue to fight, no matter what the Empire threw at them. After Earth's first victory against the Empire's fleet, a sense of hope spread across the planet. People believed that perhaps they could truly stand against the seemingly unstoppable invaders. The streets were filled with celebrations, and many began to believe that the worst was over. But in the vastness of space, the Empire was not idle. The first battle had been a blow to their pride, and they were now more determined than ever to crush Earth's resistance. Back in space, the Empire's leaders convened in a dark, imposing command center aboard their flagship, the Dreadnought. The mood was tense as the high-ranking officers discussed their next move. The defeat had shocked them. They had expected Earth to bow down, but instead, the humans had fought back with ingenuity and resilience. "Those humans are more resourceful than we thought," Admiral Korath, the commander of the fleet, said, his voice cold and commanding. "We underestimated them, but that mistake will not happen again." His officers nodded in agreement. "We'll need to strike harder," one officer suggested. Their victory was a fluke. If we overwhelm them with force, they'll have no choice but to surrender. Korath's eyes narrowed as he stared at the holographic map of Earth. "No, we won't just overwhelm them with force. We'll break them. We'll make them understand that they cannot resist the Empire." The Empire's response was swift. A new fleet of ships, larger and more powerful than the first, was dispatched toward Earth. This time, they came with a terrifying weapon, an energy beam capable of destroying entire cities with a single strike. The Empire had learned from its previous mistake. They would not give Earth a chance to regroup. As the Empire's fleet neared Earth, the atmosphere on the planet shifted once again. The celebrations that had erupted after the first victory now seemed distant. People were once again filled with fear and uncertainty. Earth's leaders knew the Empire's retaliation would be severe, and the battle ahead would be far more dangerous. Dr. Helen Carter, along with Naomi Takeda and other leaders of the human resistance, gathered to discuss the next steps. They had lost their advantage. The Empire's fleet was now stronger, and the new weapon they carried was unlike anything Earth had ever seen. "We need to be ready," Dr. Carter said, her voice steady but filled with concern. "We've seen what they can do. We cannot afford to underestimate them this time." Naomi looked at the others. "We have to find a way to counter that energy beam. If it can destroy entire cities, we won't have a chance." The group fell silent, thinking. They knew they couldn't build a weapon of equal power. They didn't have the resources or technology to create something like that. But they did have one thing the Empire didn't: their creativity. "We fought with what we had, and we've won before," Marcos said, his voice calm. "We can do it again. We just need to think differently." Helen nodded. "We need to focus on using our strengths. We're not going to defeat them by meeting them head-on. We need to be smarter." The Resistance began working on a new strategy, one that would rely on their new technologies and enhanced abilities. The drones would be deployed once again, but this time, they would focus on gathering data about the Empire's new weapon. They needed to understand how it worked and find a weakness. Meanwhile, Naomi and her team worked tirelessly to develop new defensive technology. They focused on creating a shield capable of deflecting the Empire's energy beam, a task that seemed nearly impossible. But they had no choice. They had to try. The days leading up to the next battle were filled with tension. Earth's military forces and enhanced warriors trained harder than ever before. They knew the Empire's attack was imminent, and they had to be ready. The world watched, hoping that the next victory would not come at too high a cost. Finally, the day came. The Empire's massive fleet appeared on the horizon, its ships lined up in perfect formation, ready to unleash their devastating weapon. As the fleet approached Earth's atmosphere, the Resistance launched their first wave of drones, flying toward the enemy ships to gather crucial information. Helen and Naomi stood in the command center, eyes glued to the screen as the drones sent back data. The energy beam was more powerful than they had feared. It wasn't just a weapon. It was a force capable of wiping out entire cities with ease. But as the drones continued their reconnaissance, they noticed something strange. The beam required a large amount of energy to fire, and there were brief moments when the weapon's systems would overheat, rendering it temporarily inactive. Naomi's eyes lit up. "If we can time our attack during one of those moments, we might be able to strike before they can fire again." The plan was set in motion. The enhanced warriors would launch a direct attack, targeting the Empire's energy weapon during the brief moments when it was vulnerable. It was a risky move, but it was their only chance. The battle that followed was chaotic and intense. Earth's forces fought with everything they had, dodging the Empire's deadly energy blasts and using their new technologies to strike back. The enhanced warriors, moving faster and more precisely than ever before, coordinated with the drones to attack the Empire's ships at the exact right moments. It was a battle of patience and timing. The Empire's weapon fired several times, devastating Earth's defenses. But each time, Earth's warriors struck when the weapon was at its weakest, targeting the energy core. After several strikes, the weapon began to falter. The energy beam's power decreased, and with one final well-timed hit, the weapon was destroyed. Earth had won again. The Empire's fleet, now without their most powerful weapon, retreated once more. The people of Earth breathed a collective sigh of relief. They had faced overwhelming odds and had come out victorious. The message was clear: Earth would not be defeated. No matter how many times the Empire returned, humanity would always rise up. Despite Earth's victories, the war was far from over. The Empire had underestimated humanity once, but they would not make the same mistake again. After their retreat, the Empire's leaders were furious. They had lost their greatest weapon, and their fleet had been severely damaged. In their eyes, Earth's resistance was no longer a minor annoyance. It was a serious threat. The Empire needed to take drastic measures to crush the rebellion before it spread any further. Back on Earth, Dr. Helen Carter and the other leaders of the resistance were aware that the Empire would not back down easily. They knew the Empire would come back with even more power, and they had to be prepared. The atmosphere on Earth had shifted once more. There was no longer the sense of celebration, but a quiet, determined readiness. Humanity had learned the true nature of their enemy, and now they had to fight smarter and harder than ever before. The War Council met in a secure underground facility. It was here that the fate of the planet would be decided. Helen, Naomi, Marcos, and several military commanders gathered around a large table, studying the latest reports from their scouts and drones. "They'll be back," Helen said, her voice calm but serious. "And they'll come prepared. We need to find a way to stay one step ahead." Naomi nodded. "The Empire won't underestimate us again. They'll come with everything they have. We need a plan that will protect Earth, but also strike back at their core." The group sat in silence, each person thinking deeply. The strategy so far had relied on using technology and the enhanced warriors to strike at the Empire's weaknesses. But now, the stakes were higher. Earth had proven its strength, but the Empire was ruthless, and they would stop at nothing to achieve victory. "I think we need to take the fight to their home base," Marcos said, breaking the silence. "If we hit them where it hurts, maybe we can force them to surrender." The idea was risky, but it was the only one that made sense. If Earth could find the Empire's command center, the heart of their military, perhaps they could deliver a blow that would end the war for good. But the question was, where was the Empire's base? For months, Earth's best minds had been working on gathering information. They knew that the Empire had advanced technologies capable of cloaking their ships and hiding their movements. They had to rely on the intelligence they had gathered through drones and spies. "We need to find a way to locate their hidden base," Helen said. "Once we know where it is, we'll have a shot at ending this once and for all." After weeks of searching, Earth's engineers and scientists discovered a clue, a faint signal that had been overlooked. It was a pattern in the Empire's communication frequencies, something that no one had noticed until now. Naomi and her team quickly began working to decode the message, and after days of analyzing it, they discovered its source. "The signal is coming from a system outside of the known Empire territories," Naomi said, eyes wide with realization. "This is where they've been hiding their command center." The team was stunned. The Empire's base wasn't just near Earth. It was in a completely different part of the galaxy, hidden in a region that Earth had never explored. It was a long journey, and the risk of sending an attack force into unknown space was enormous. But this was their chance. With the location of the Empire's command center in hand, Earth began making preparations. The enhanced warriors were once again called into action. But this time, the stakes were much higher. They would be traveling farther than ever before, into the heart of enemy territory. The mission was to infiltrate the Empire's base, gather critical intelligence, and sabotage their command structure. As Earth's forces prepared to launch their mission, the Empire was busy making its own plans. They had learned from their earlier mistakes and were now moving with greater precision. Admiral Korath, the Empire's leader, had grown desperate. His once proud fleet had been humiliated by the humans, and he knew that if Earth's resistance continued, the Empire's entire reign could be in jeopardy. Korath had one final card to play, a weapon of mass destruction that had been in development for years, a weapon capable of wiping out entire planets. The Empire's leaders had kept it hidden, but now, in the face of their defeat, they had decided to unleash it. As Earth's forces prepared for their mission, they remained unaware of the new threat that was approaching. The Empire's weapon, a massive planet-destroying device, was on its way to Earth. Its power was beyond anything humanity had ever seen, and its arrival would mark the beginning of a new phase in the war. Meanwhile, Earth's warriors were readying themselves for the mission that could change the fate of the galaxy. The journey to the Empire's base would take them far from home, and the risks were high. But they knew that this was the moment they had been waiting for. If they could sabotage the Empire's command center, they could cripple the enemy and end the war. The ships carrying Earth's warriors lifted off from the planet's surface, their engines roaring as they left the atmosphere. The world watched as they disappeared into the vastness of space. For the first time in history, humanity was about to take the fight directly to the heart of the Empire. But little did they know, the Empire was already preparing to unleash its ultimate weapon. The universe seemed vast, cold, and endless as Earth's warriors made their way toward the Empire's hidden base. Their mission was clear: infiltrate the enemy's stronghold, gather vital intelligence, and destroy their command center. The stakes had never been higher. If they succeeded, they could end the war, but if they failed, Earth might fall. The journey through space was long, filled with moments of tension. The ships carrying Earth's finest warriors sailed quietly through the stars, every crew member aware of the risks that lay ahead. Each one had volunteered for this mission, knowing they might never return. Yet despite the fear, there was something else in their hearts: hope. They had already achieved the impossible once, and they would do it again. Naomi Takeda, the brilliant inventor, was at the helm of one of the ships. Beside her was Marcos, the former farmer-turned-engineer, who had become a vital part of Earth's resistance. Both were calm, focused on the task at hand. Naomi had developed several new technologies for this mission, including cloaking devices that would help them avoid detection. It was their only hope of reaching the Empire's base undetected. Dr. Helen Carter, who had led the research and development of the enhanced warriors, sat in the command center of the flagship. Her eyes were fixed on the holographic map of their journey. "Stay focused," she said over the intercom. "The moment we make contact with the Empire's base, we strike fast and hard. No mistakes." The crew acknowledged the order, and for the next few hours, the ships traveled silently, avoiding the Empire's patrols. Earth's forces had done everything they could to prepare for this moment. They knew the enemy would not make the same mistakes again. The Empire had already begun to deploy their new weapon, a planet-destroying device that was on its way to Earth. Earth's warriors could not afford to wait any longer. As they neared the Empire's base, a sense of urgency filled the air. The tension was palpable. They were getting closer to the heart of the Empire's power, and they had no idea what they would face once they arrived. But they had no choice. This was the only opportunity they had to save Earth. Then, just as they entered the last stretch of the journey, the unexpected happened. A massive fleet appeared out of nowhere, blocking their path. It was the Empire. They had anticipated Earth's move and had set a trap. The warriors were now surrounded, trapped between the vastness of space and the full might of the Empire's fleet. There was no way out. The enemy had calculated every possible move and was now ready to destroy Earth's forces once and for all. Admiral Korath, aboard the dreadnought, stood in the control room, his face cold with determination. "They've come this far, but now we end this," he said to his officers. "Prepare to fire." The Empire's weapon, the one capable of destroying planets, was ready. Its enormous energy core hummed with power as it charged up for its first deadly strike. Helen stood in the command center, watching the incoming fleet with a sense of dread. They had been so close to their goal. The Empire was ready to finish what they had started, but Helen knew they could not give up. Not now. "Activate the cloaking devices," she ordered. "We're not done yet." The warriors' ships flickered for a moment, disappearing from the radar of the Empire's fleet. The attack force had gone silent, but not before one last message was sent back to Earth. "Prepare for the final strike," Helen whispered to herself. Earth's warriors, now cloaked, moved quickly. Using their enhanced abilities, they avoided the Empire's patrols and approached the enemy base. Every heartbeat seemed like an eternity as they drew closer to their target. But the moment they arrived, everything changed. Korath's weapon, the planet-destroying device, was locked and ready to fire. It would be unstoppable, and Earth would fall. But just as it prepared to unleash its power, the warriors launched their final, decisive strike. The cloaked ships descended from all sides, releasing drones that scattered into the Empire's base, disrupting its power grid. Naomi's technology had done its work, as the drones flooded the base's defense systems with false data, making it impossible for the Empire to properly target Earth. In the confusion, the warriors infiltrated the command center, moving with swift precision. They sabotaged key systems, shutting down the planet-destroying weapon before it could even fire. The energy core, which had once glowed with devastating power, now flickered and died. In the midst of this chaos, Helen's voice came through on the comms. "Mission accomplished. We've disabled the weapon. Get out of there. Now." But just as they began to retreat, Korath's voice echoed across the comms. "You think you've won. You think you've defeated the Empire. This is just the beginning." The Empire's fleet fired on Earth's forces, but it was too late. Earth's warriors, having completed their mission, retreated into the safety of deep space, leaving the Empire in disarray. Their command center was in ruins, and their ultimate weapon lay in pieces. Back on Earth, the people watched as their warriors returned. The moment they landed, they were met with cheers and applause. The mission had been a success, but it had come at a great cost. Many of the warriors would never return home, but their sacrifice had ensured that Earth's future was secure. For the first time, Earth had struck a decisive blow to the Empire. They had taken the fight to the heart of the enemy, and they had won. The war was far from over, but Earth had proven something vital. They would not kneel, and they would not surrender. As the Earth celebrated, Helen stood quietly on the balcony of the command center. She looked up at the stars, knowing that this victory was just the beginning of a new chapter for humanity. The Empire had underestimated them once, and they had paid the price. Now, Earth would continue to fight, and no force in the galaxy could stop them.